Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Teague Egan. He is, as I mentioned, CEO of EnergyX. And his company has some really interesting new technology about lithium ion transport and separation technology. It's unparalleled, highly scalable nanotechnology capable of rapid ion transport. This nanotechnology recovers 90% lithium compared to the current processes, which typically recover about 30%. So without further ado, I am going to let Teague take over and tell us all about it. So welcome, Teague.
A lot of people on here. This is exciting. Thanks for joining me, everybody. So I assume everybody on here is an electric vehicle owner, as am I. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my story. Let me just share my screen here. So basically, a quick overview on EnergyX and what we do before I get into my story and kind of hopefully share something with you guys that you don't know about. We started the company about almost 3 years ago now. And we're focused on two things. One is lithium production and the way that we can improve lithium production, which is lithium being the main material or one of the most important materials in batteries. And two is the actual battery itself. So how can we make better batteries that last longer? So those are the two things we're focused on. And just jump in. So when I present to groups like this, I usually like to ask this question: do you know where lithium comes from? So I've been a Tesla owner since 2013. I invested in the stock at $8 a share, and a few weeks after it went up like 50%, and I bought a Tesla. So I'm also a car owner, and for 5 years, I didn't know where lithium came from. You know, it's something that you pretty much just take for granted. But lithium is extremely important, obviously. It's a common denominator amongst all battery architectures. So whether you're talking about the current lithium ion battery or future generations of batteries that people are working on, like solid state batteries, or lithium sulfur batteries, or lithium air batteries, lithium is pretty much here to stay. Now, when you think about how much lithium it takes for a car, which is obviously important to everyone here, it takes about 10,000 iPhone batteries to make one electric vehicle. And when you start to think about how many electric vehicles there are going to be, just to put that in perspective, for every 1 million electric vehicles, that's 10 billion iPhones. So you can start to realize how important lithium is in the overall value supply chain of electric vehicles and what that means for the demand in the coming years. Lithium is going to be one of the most valuable natural resources as millions upon millions of electric cars are manufactured. So I found out where lithium came from when I was down in South America, just traveling through the various countries, Chile, Peru, Bolivia. I went down on a trip for New Year's, and one of our destinations was this place in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni. And this is the world's largest salt flat. It's so big that you can see it from space. It's about 4,000 square miles. And like this picture shows, it's completely flat and white for literally as far as the eye can see. So I'm on this tour. You go out on like these Land Rovers. And while I'm on this tour, our tour guide is talking about all the salt. And then he says, yeah, this is also the largest lithium reserve in the entire world. And then he kind of kept going. And I was like, whoa, like, wait, hold on a second. What do you mean? And he goes, yeah, well, the lithium is in the salt brine that is below the surface of of the salt flat. So underneath, there's all this brine that's coming down from the mountains, and it's trapping a lot of this lithium. And this is the largest lithium reserve in the world. A lot of people think that this could be the next Saudi Arabia. And that really got me going. I said, you know, I have owned a Tesla for this long. I believe that it's going to skyrocket. And obviously, we've all seen what's happened the past year. This is where I want to focus my efforts as an entrepreneur into the future of renewable energy. I didn't know how, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that there was a huge opportunity here in lithium in Bolivia. So then I started to do research on how lithium is actually produced. And what I found was astonishing. So lithium is produced one of two ways. One is your traditional hard rock mining, like the way that they mine copper in big open pits. And it's pretty typical. The second way is through these massive evaporation ponds where they extract the lithium from the brine. And brine is just a fancy word for really salty water. So ocean water is about 3% salinity. These brines are anywhere from 25 to 35% salinity, similar to the Dead Sea in Israel, so salty that you can float. So out of that, call it 30% salt that's in the water, a portion of that is magnesium, a portion of that is sodium, a portion of that is chloride, a portion of that is calcium, and a portion of that is lithium. And the idea is, how do you separate the lithium from all of the rest of the salts? And the way that they do it today is through these massive evaporation ponds. So what you're looking at here is a pond system that's run by SQM, which is the second largest lithium producer in the world, the first being Albemarle. And this pond system right here, to put this into perspective, is the size of Manhattan, from the tip of downtown to above Central Park. It's 15 square miles, absolutely enormous. And the brine that's pumped out from below goes through this sequence for 18 months. And finally, there's enough concentrated lithium down here in these yellow ponds to be able to process it into the battery grade lithium chemical that's then inserted into the cathode. And that's how lithium gets into the batteries that are in your electric vehicles. So it takes a long time. Obviously, this is, pretty environmentally harmful. It needs to be in a perfect environment to do this. This place in Chile has the highest UV radiation. It has less than a half an inch of rain per year, and it's completely flat. But what really stood out to me was that it only recovers about 30% of the available lithium. I mean, this is obviously a pretty inexact science. They're using the natural sun, moving huge amounts of water from one pond into the next, and scooping out all this salt, as you can see in these massive piles here. I mean, these piles are hundreds of thousands of tons of salt, not lithium, but other salts. So I said, where's the technology here? There has to be a better way to do this. I come from investing in disruptive technologies and seeing the transformation of, apps and what they can do, and seeing what, manufacturing has done for other industries like water desalination, right? And I said to myself, if we can separate all of the salt out of ocean water and make fresh drinking water using membrane separation technology, then why can we not do a similar process and just separate out the lithium? Why are our membranes not advanced enough to do that? And that got me searching. And what I found is that there are people working on that, and we do have materials that can separate just the lithium from all the other salts. And that's how I started EnergyX. So I'm actually here in Austin right now, and we were able to license a portfolio of patents from the University of Texas, which is one of the top membrane centers in the United States that has a $10 million DOE grant. And we're working on commercializing that technology. And here's how it works. So basically, there are these nanoparticles called metal organic frameworks that have customizable pore sizes that are small enough to allow lithium through and reject the larger salts like magnesium and calcium and sulfate that are unwanted salts in the final solution, right? So we use these nanoparticles and embed them in a polymer matrix to create what's called a mixed matrix membrane, right? We put those membranes into modules and then create module clusters where you can move millions of gallons of brine through these membranes and separate them into two streams. So you have a lithium enriched stream and a lithium depleted stream. And then that lithium enriched stream is what ultimately becomes processed into the lithium salts. And because we're using a mechanical separation process, we can avoid all of the losses that occur in the ponds and recover up to 90% of the available lithium. So what this means overall is that now you're significantly dropping the capital and the OpEx per ton of lithium, which is one of the main costs in batteries. And we all know that batteries are the main cost in electric vehicles. So using this method, it's obviously a much more environmentally friendly. You're not taking up tens of square miles of space and disrupting natural ecosystems, a much smaller footprint, and it takes a lot less time. So basically, what we have done here is created the equivalent of fracking for lithium production. It's something that has vastly increased the efficiency here in lithium production, and hopefully will drop the price of lithium as we move towards commercialization. So this is kind of an idea of our go-to-market. So our generation 1 is a system that works with the ponds. What we figured out when we first started developing the technology, my initial thought process was, the ponds are inefficient, let's get rid of the ponds. When I started approaching the top lithium producers, including SQM, they laughed me out of the building. They said, we're not going to go try an untested technology when we've invested billions of dollars in our ponds. So when I reanalyzed the situation, I said, we need to create something that's complementary to the ponds to start. So that's where our generation 1 comes in. Generation 2 then treats the brine from the feed. So once we have completely maximized the efficiency of the existing ponds, then new producers that are coming online or existing producers that want to expand their capacity don't want to build more ponds. So we have a system that can completely replace the ponds, but that's what our generation 2 is. Generation 3, if you guys are familiar with the type of lithium that Tesla uses, they use a purified product called lithium hydroxide here. And that's because it has a lot longer lifespan. So it enables cars to last 10 years, the number of cycles that the battery can do, versus like 2 or 3 years before it degrades from 100% to 80%, which is considered complete degradation. However, right now, to get to lithium hydroxide, you need to go through lithium carbonate, which is also a good product. Apple uses lithium carbonate in their iPhones, but Tesla uses lithium hydroxide. So what we're doing is creating a generation 3, which allows us to bypass carbonate and go directly to hydroxide. This is another 50% decrease in the cost of goods sold for the lithium. And that'll again significantly decrease the price of lithium to the cell manufacturer. So here's just a kind of cost comparison that I like to use once we get to generation 2. We're talking about a few days versus 18 months. In both generation 1 and generation 2, we're talking about 90% recovery rate, which is really the big factor here. Water is a really, really big thing here. So in these places, such as the high deserts of Bolivia or Atacama, which is the driest place in the world, water is very scarce. So creating a system that uses minimal water is very important to producers. The performance comparison is pretty low in ponds compared to pretty high with us. And the cost comparison for generation 1, we're looking at almost a 40% savings here in the cost. So I think that is about my time. Elaine told me I have 20 minutes and I want to keep it to that. So on our website, we have a resource guide. Our website is just EnergyX.com, and you can see we have the X files up here, which you can learn more about these different things or more about our technology. And yeah, it's just EnergyX.com, and that's us. So just want to thank everybody here for their time. And if you have more questions, you can also reach me at just Teague@EnergyX.com or hello@EnergyX.com.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Teague. And we do have a question from Bill. He said, it sounds like reverse osmosis, which is energy intensive. What is the energy equation versus solar evaporation process?
Yep. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Still? Cool. So
yep.
Reverse osmosis is how water, like typical water desalination works, and it is capital intensive compared to the price of water, right? But when you're talking about selling a ton of water, which is like $1 versus a ton of lithium, which is $13,000, it's not that big of a piece of the OpEx. However, we actually don't use, so reverse osmosis uses pressure. They push the seawater through the membranes. We are actually using, so that's one of 3 mechanisms that you can move a solution through a membrane. The other 2 are dialysis, which is using a concentration gradient. So if you have a really concentrated solution, like these 30% total dissolved solids, brines, and you're moving them into a deionized water solution, the salts want to travel from the concentrated solution to the less concentrated solution. That uses very little energy, but like I mentioned, these places are water scarce, and you have to have a lot of water fresh water on the other side of the membrane. So we're not going to use that. The third one is a process called electrodialysis. So we're actually moving the brine through the membrane using an electric potential. And this does use a good amount of energy, but in the overall CapEx equation, it's less than $100, or the OpEx equation, it's less than $100 per ton of lithium for the OpEx. So it's a relatively small expense in the overall OpEx. And electrodialysis actually accomplishes 2 things. So we want to not only separate all the lithiums from the magnesium and the calcium and the rest of the salts to the other side, we want to concentrate as well. So if we have a solution on the other side that's still a very little concentration, but a very pure little concentration, that doesn't do us very good. We would still then need to evaporate a lot of the water. So using electrodialysis, we're able to separate and concentrate the amount of lithium on the other side of the membrane so that it's ready to be crystallized into the final product.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, Teague. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yes, Elaine, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Teague, for your presentation. Very informative. Yeah, I was thinking about something as you're presenting. I know that speaking of Tesla, J.B. Straubel of Tesla fame, I started a company, I think it's called Redwood Materials, with the intention of recycling lithium ion batteries, anticipating, of course, lots of spent lithium ion batteries in the coming years. I'm just wondering, how does your process compare with what he's planning to do in terms of environmental impact, in terms of energy usage, that type of thing?
So there's similarities in some of our technologies. First of all, very familiar with redwood materials. JB just had a great featured profile in the Wall Street Journal, and if you guys haven't read that, you probably should. It's fascinating read. It's like 5 or 6 pages talking about redwood, and the problem that he's addressing is absolutely massive. I think that these batteries that all these Teslas have eventually are going to degrade, right? Like Elon is trying to build a 1 million mile battery, but from my personal experience, my Tesla started out at 265 miles per charge, and I got this in 2013. Now I max out at about 210, 215. So I've already seen substantial degradation in my battery, right? So obviously, at some point, that battery will either be repurposed or recycled. And, JB is probably leading in that effort. I think that, when I was touring the Gigafactory, our tour guide told us that Tesla is working on similar technology to recycle, but within that recycling process, they're going to have to separate the lithium out. I don't know exactly how the whole recycling process works. You obviously have a lot more material in the battery with a cathode that Tesla uses NMC, nickel, manganese, and cobalt. They're trying to move away from cobalt. And then they use high nickel, and then they use silicone, and they have, in lithium ion, they have a separator and liquid electrolyte. So there's a lot of materials in there that is a challenge to separate all of them at an economical point. But, for us, we're more focused on the production and making the production of new lithium material as environmentally friendly as possible. So, I hope that answered your question.
All right. Excellent. And then we have, thank you. We have 2 more questions before we wrap this portion up. So from Peter, is the process used or proposed by the company Neo Lithium an improvement over the conventional method? Is there any commonality between its processes and EnergyX's?
Neo Lithium. I know Neo, the electric car maker. Let me just look up. Neo.
Yeah, I think it's a small company, and they're I think they're using Argentina brine, but they're like on the small cap penny stock board or something, but they claim to have a more efficient process, the way they handle the brine, and more environmentally sensitive. But other than that, I don't know much about them.
Yeah, I've never heard of Neo.
Okay. And then we have another question.
Bad.
Can the salt flats in Utah be a domestic source of lithium?
Yes, they actually can. And so this area in South America is known as the Lithium Triangle because its concentrations of lithium are relatively high to that of some of the domestic sources. But the Great Salt Lake does have lithium. And we're actually exploring ways to work with some of the larger companies that are around there, like US Magnesium, Intrepid Potash, Compass Minerals, Cargill. Potash is a predecessor to lithium. So in the pond sequence, sodium chloride, which is table salt, comes out first. Then potassium chloride, which is potash, and that can be used as fertilizer. It sells for a few $100s per ton. then magnesium, and US Mag is the largest producer of that in the world, and then lithium comes out. So working with some of these companies to extend their process and take their tail brine could be a potential source of lithium. And I think, that's very interesting, and it's a domestic source. And it's something we're exploring. A few other domestic sources are the Salton Sea in California. And then some of these big oil and gas companies that are producing tons of produced water. So there's scenarios where 20 barrels of produced water will come up with every barrel of oil and gas in a fracking scenario. There's actually a decent amount of lithium in the produced water. So they're looking to take value from that as well. So those are kind of the three domestic sources that people are looking at.
Great, thanks, Teague. And then one last quick question. Why is your company headquartered in Puerto Rico?
So we're headquartered in Puerto Rico for tax purposes. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, as you guys all know, but it has no representation in the US Congress. That might change soon, we'll see. But because of that, they're able to make their own tax laws. And since we're headquartered in Puerto Rico, we only have 4% business tax. So it's advantageous for our shareholders to have that type of structure.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Teague. I really appreciate you taking the time and telling us all about your technology. It sounds really, really exciting.
And for everybody else here that's asking questions, I gave you my email address or just hello@EnergyX. I answer all of those as well. So more than happy to answer any questions after we're done here. But thanks, Elaine, and thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks again, Teague.